Hey, welcome back to another episode of The Hustle Years. I am your host, Jacob Johnston. Hey, as I stated before, if you are looking to become a guest on this show, right, and you want to be able to tell your success story, send your email with a brief summary of what you want to talk about to hypodcast@outlook.com. We'll schedule a time for you to be able to come on Skype and do the interview, and then of course it'll be broadcasted live, somewhat live. I mean, I do pre-record the interviews, of course, but this will be broadcasted on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Periscope, and YouNow. Those are the platforms in which I do my broadcast, and then of course the audio is ripped out of the videos that I then save, and then I throw it up as a podcast available in iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play Podcast. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about today's interview so that you have an idea of what it is I'm bringing to you. Here is another author, but he's also a career search expert. His name is Rick Gillis. He wrote a book called How to Find a Job in One Day. Right? Learn how to find a job in one day. So it's not necessarily saying that, hey, through his technique you'll land a job in a single day. No, it only takes one day to learn how to find a job. Now, I got this mixed up when I was doing an interview, which, I'm still learning how to do interviews, and again, I still need to work on being able to keep these interviews shorter because they're starting to go into creating hour-and-a-half long shows. Now, if you don't mind an hour-and-a-half long show, as long as you're getting great information, hey, no problem. Then we'll keep going through, and I'll start, making sure to schedule these for like an hour and a half and go through. So we're going to talk about various techniques in which you can write your resume in order to land a job, the software that businesses use to automatically scan your resume when it's trying to find keywords or anything, the initial filter before you get in. And then there's going to be some interview techniques that is going to be introduced. So you're going to get a lot of information out of this show, and you're going to be able to hear in depth what he has to say, the techniques that you can use. Again, this is part 2 of my 3-part interview series with career search experts. For those of you who are not exactly entrepreneurs, or maybe you are entrepreneurs, but you don't have enough funding to launch the way you want to right now, and so you may need to get a 9-to-5 temporarily in order to generate cash flow to fund your entrepreneurial journey or to launch your side hustle. We all know that jumping from business to business actually gets your pay up faster than staying in the same company and trying to get promotions. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why. We won't necessarily cover those here, but I just wanted to be able to bring that out, and why, if you are using a day job as a means to fund you building your own entrepreneurial journey, or if you are not an entrepreneur and just want to learn how to get a day job, or get a job, or land the career you actually want in the business and industry you want to do it. These interviews are really good. So we're going to get into my interview with Rick Gillis, and after that, I will say I do have something in the next interview for those of you who are just getting out of college or about to graduate college. Tips that you can implement when you have no experience. Okay, so without any further delay, because anybody who's watching this live should now be able to have gotten onto the feed through their preferred platform. So let's go ahead and get into this interview, and I hope you enjoy. Rick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you. And I know that you have written a few books, and we're going to get into that. But for those who don't already know who you are, Give us an overview of your background and your profession.
Wow. Okay. The fact is, I was employee number one with a group called HoustonEmployment.com. We were the first. We were the first job board website in the greater Houston area, serving the entire southeast part of Texas, and then we grew virtually across the nation. I was employee number one. I was the face of the company. I was out selling. I was calling on HR professionals, staffing companies, hiring managers, and as a result, I was learning employment. At the same time, I was asked to speak to job-seeking organizations and tell them how this new internet thing was working. That was back in 1997. So I consider myself a digital dinosaur in that sense. That led to speaking to groups. They got larger and larger. I've written 4 books on job search and employment. And I do a lot of one-on-one counseling across the nation. Developed a website. That's rickgillis.com. And I try to make this stuff as available to the public as much as possible.
Okay. And that definitely is a great background there. One of the books that you've written is called How to Find Your Next Job in One Day. Now, for that to work, is that assuming that you have kept your network warm and your profiles up to date in between job searches, or does that literally start from scratch and find a job that day?
Let me tell you what, let me qualify that. Let me correct you a little bit, Jacob, because the book title is not how to, and I hear this a lot, especially when I do radio interviews. The book title is not how to find your job in one day. It's learn how to find your job in one day. Because the reason I called it that is because you can read this book in literally 45 minutes to 2 hours. And that you will know what you need, fundamentally know the core of what you need to find your next job. And it's really important that I tell you that, and I really appreciate the question, because I have learned from my last books that I was writing the great American job search novel. People don't want a lot of information when they're out there looking for their next job. They only want to know exactly what they need to do today to be active and to help find their next position. Now, the job book is useful for the job seeker. It is also useful for the person who's on the job who might be thinking of another opportunity. So kind of to get back to your question, and is this something you can start from day one, or something you want to grow and develop the network and stuff? The answer to both of those is yes. The fact is, you should always be working your network. We know statistically, and I don't know where these stats come from, but 60 to 80% of all jobs are found as a result of networking. If you're not networking, you're wasting incredibly valuable time, and that networking can be, if you're just a new college graduate, it can be working with your friends' parents. A lot of young people are concerned about how do they start networking. That's a great place to start. Of course, on the job, when you're working with people and you find similar mindsets and stuff, people who will support you and go out. But so to get back to the question, yes, you can use the job book to start your job search today that you have not been, let's say you're brand new out of college and you're ready to go to work, or you've been at home as a stay-at-home mom and you're ready to get back to work, or you've been unemployed for a period of time or you just got terminated. Yes, it's a great book for that. However, it's also a fabulous book for that person who is actively seeking another opportunity. And so I hate to say it's one size fit all, but I will. The job book is a one size fit all. It's a very short, simple, easy to read book, and I wrote it exactly with that in mind.
Okay, so I will have to go back and double check here, because when I looked up the book on Amazon, maybe it just had it the title listed wrong. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay, and when getting ready to start your job search, what are some of the best ways or best things that you can do to prepare to be successful at it?
Okay, good question once again, and I'll tell you why it's a good question, and let me go back to the job book. Everybody, when they start their job search, the first thing they do is they create a resume. And I will categorically tell you that is the wrong place. Now, I work with entry-level college students all the way to C-suite candidates. I've helped place senior vice presidents, 4 CEOs, several CIOs, etc. I work with very high-level candidates as well as entry-level. I treat them all exactly the same. And the very first thing everybody has to start with, if you want to work with me, is to create an accomplishments inventory. You have to take a personal inventory of the value you're going to bring to an organization, whether it's a brand new college kid who does not, and by the way, when I say kid, I don't mean that disrespectfully. It's young people when I say that. No disrespect is implied or intended. But when I'm working with a young college graduate, the first thing I do is I make them go back through, and they can go all the way back to high school and determine their very best achievements. Those things are going to make somebody really want to take notice of them. And young people quite often don't have these great achievements. They haven't sold $1 million. They haven't created a new product. But they do have a lot of soft skills that employers want. Motivation, take charge, willing to take the lead, and as simple as showing up on time, dressed appropriately, professional, willing to listen, willing to learn, that kind of stuff. The accomplishments worksheet is actually, and that's what I call it, is the first 3 chapters of the job book. You will start, and it's important because really once you have taken this inventory, and I walk you through the steps on how to do that, once you have taken this inventory, resume creation is little more than formatting, but more importantly, taking this inventory preps you to interview, it preps you to negotiate salaries, it preps you to network, it preps you how to compete. And when I work with a client, my goal is that when we're done and they make it to the interview, my client is the most compelling and memorable client they have interviewed. And therefore, I'm hoping at the end of the day, my client is the only person who is remembered at the end of the day for having been so compelling and memorable, having expressed how they're going to add value to the organization, and therefore they're a natural for the hire.
Okay, and so what you're saying is, instead of just going straight to the resume, you have to first figure out what it is your skills are, list them down, and then the resume is just reformatting that.
No, I don't want to say skills. I think skills are really easy to do. Myself, I'm a public speaker, I'm an internet guy, I'm a musician, I'm a commercial real estate person. This is in my background. That's my skill set. Accomplishments are really what it's all about, Jacob. And the reason I say that is because, for instance, you and I just meet and we're in the elevator, and you've always heard about this 30-second elevator pitch. I don't believe that. I think it's more like 6 to 10 seconds. But let's say I meet and you're the person I have been trying to get next to interview for your company. You're the CEO, you're the hiring manager, you're whatever. And if I come up and tell you, hi, my name is Rick Gillis, I want to get a job with you, that's not going to be very impressive. That's all about me wanting something from you. Whereas the difference is with an accomplishment, you make the statement, you say, hi, my name is Rick Gillis. Previously at one company, I was responsible for 49% of all sales that resulted in about $1 million to the bottom line. Is that something I can tell you more about? That is something now that I am telling you how I'm going to add value to your organization, and that is much more fundamental. Now, I'm hoping you're going to say, Rick, I'd like to talk to you more about this. And I get an invite into your office, we sit down, then I might start talking to you about skills. But the accomplishment piece, and listen, the accomplishments worksheet, this is not an inventory that's meant to just be an exercise, and it's not meant to be something you just use to learn to find your next job. It is meant to be for the rest of your career. It is meant to be a journal, if you will. You should always be able to express your value to your employer, what you're working on today, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, 3 weeks ago, 3 months ago, last year. And that's very difficult to do if you're not actually noting this kind of stuff. It's amazing when you get to a performance report and you can express all this value, because don't assume that your boss knows what you're doing. Even if your boss is across the hall, don't assume that your boss knows what you're doing. Always be prepared to express your value. That also comes, like I said, performance reports, but it could be the difference between you and a promotion. It could be the difference between you getting terminated and the guy in the next cubicle, because you're able to express your value and he or she is not able to. So this accomplishments piece, is based in your skills, but every skill piece you have to be able to say, matter of fact, let me give you the formula for an accomplishment. I was responsible for blank that resulted in blank. That resulted in is the middle of every accomplishment. I tell people every accomplishment has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The beginning is what you did, the middle is resulting in, and the end is that result. The employer is interested only in that result. See, I told you I was responsible for 49% of all sales that resulted in $1 million. Let me tell you what, as an employer, as a business owner, you really didn't hear the 49% piece. You heard the $1 million. That's what you keyed on, and that is of interest to me, and I want to bring you in and say, how did you do that? And one of the things that I tell everybody in my live presentations is when somebody says, how do they do that? You should do the little Snoopy dance inside, because the reality is I don't really want to know how much you did that or how you did that as much as I want to know, can you do that for me? That's when I'm going to hire you.
Okay, so what you are talking about here is more along the lines of employers aren't necessarily concerned about the skills you claim to have. They want to know how you've used it to produce results that add value to the company.
And skills are important. I mean, obviously, yes. But if let's put it this way. Let me kind of answer that question with a side comment. You view your paycheck as payment for services rendered. An employer views your paycheck as an investment in you. And if you're not returning money on that, not necessarily money, value. It does not have to be revenue generated. It can be time saved. It can be you're doing the work of 3 people, etc. But the point is, if you are returning, or if there's a return on that investment, I'm going to keep you. This is no different than playing the stock market. If I'm going to go buy a stock and I'm going to sit on it, if I see it growing and growing, I'm going to keep it. If not, I'm going to dump it. I'm going to cut my losses and get out of it. It's the same exactly every day when people get terminated. Quite often, it has to do with the fact that they're not returning value, and somebody else they're going to be replaced with is expected, anticipated, they will return value.
Okay, and when taking a look through your YouTube channel, I noticed that you gave advice about resumes here that we've been talking about, and there's a million different people out there giving all types of advice on resumes. It's like the one document everyone agrees that you need to have, but nobody agrees on how you should write it. And one of the statements that popped out to me is that your goal of the resume is to tell your story. So how exactly do you tell your story in a resume? Is this like content marketing online, or how exactly are you meaning for people to tell their story, or how to tell their story in the resume?
Okay, let me tell you what. Let's go back to the job book. The first 3 chapters are about accomplishments. The next 3 chapters are about how to develop what I've designed. I've designed my own resume format. I call it the short form resume. I also call it the accomplishments-based resume. Once again, to tell the story is to do so in accomplishments. I generally do not like most resumes I look at. I've been looking at resumes now for 18 years since I helped start that first job board, and I can almost categorically tell you why your resume will not be looked at by a recruiter. Usually it's because there's too much information. There's a reason why Twitter is very, very successful. 140 characters or less. If you can give me little bite-sized nuggets of information and get me excited to call you, see, I'm about setting up your resume more as a tease. See, the resume only serves one purpose, Jacob, and that is, and to your audience, whoever's listening to this, please pay attention. This is really important. Your resume only serves one purpose, and that is to create a dialogue. You're not going to get a job from a resume. All you're hoping for is a phone call, which is why I tell people you're not looking for a job, you're looking for a phone call. So send me a resume, send me a document that's going to pique my curiosity, pique my interest. And it's not so much on telling the story, it's in telling little bitty nuggets, which are those accomplishments. Because see, you're going to take when you're working with me, this accomplishments list, a young person is going to give me 8 to 10 accomplishments. A professional is going to give me 18 to 20 accomplishments. We're going to take the very 4 best and make those and put those into the top half of your resume. The resume document is available. Anybody can look at this at rickgillis.com/resume format. If they'll go there, they can go to the bottom of the page. They can see all the documents I talked about, the accomplishments worksheet, the short form resume. The other piece about the short form resume, and it is designed to fit on one page. The reason for that is a lot of people are not aware that the resume filtering software used by the end user, the hiring authority, the HR director, whoever, they don't always, but they can set their filtering to only scan one page. Now, if they're only scanning one page and you have some rich, robust keywords on pages 2, 3, and 4, you may get missed and overlooked. And remember, this is a piece of software that is looking at your document prior to a real human person looking at it. So you may not even get in the mix, which is another reason, and this might turn our whole conversation around a little bit, Jacob, but this is another reason why I have added a keyword section at the bottom of my resume, which is, these are the terms actually extracted from the job posting that are placed at the bottom of this document, and they are there to play the game of getting through the resume filter. And I have no problem saying playing the game. You have to game the system. You have to successfully navigate that resume filtering software. Even smaller companies these days are now starting to use this software because it's very inexpensive. But one page, and I don't care if you have 60 years of experience, I can show people how to condense that experience and put it on one page. I have created my format based on this. People like my resume. Recruiters really like my resume in the sense that right off the bat, we don't start off with 200 words of a summary that is a bunch of fluff. Not everybody in the world is a hard-working, hard-charging, dependable, motivated. You know, all those words are fluff. And every recruiter has seen them over and over and over, and they look right past that. Get me to the point where you're going to, once again, I know I'm repeating myself, but get me to the point really quickly when I look at your resume to tell me how you're going to add value. That is the key to a resume. And just going on and on and on and saying, I did this, and I did this, and I can do that, and I can do this, and I can do that, and I did this, until you tell me what the net result of that was, it makes no difference. It makes no difference how much fluff in there. I mean, I've seen resumes that were, I had one guy review his resume, it was 30 pages long. And I just flat told him, I said, dude, cut this thing down and I'll look at it because I'm not going to waste my time. I said, you need a blog, not a resume. And he shortened it to 6 pages. And I started laughing again, and I said, I'm not even going to waste my time with this. Nobody is going to read 6 pages. This guy wanted to make sure everybody knew everything about him, and quite frankly, that'll work against you. Leave a lot of the fluff out. Give me a lot of white space. I'm a real big proponent of white space on a resume. Make me call you. Remember, the resume is for creating a dialogue. Do something compelling on that document that gets me to call you so I can ask you questions to fill in that space. Guess what? When you're asking me questions, that's called an interview. That's really the important part of this whole thing.
Okay, so when taking a look at this, if I understand you, they don't want to know everything about your background, everything about your history. They only want to know the parts that relate to the job or the problem that they need solved, and you want to leave mystery. You don't want to try and close on the first date, so to speak, but rather you want to, to get them interested, get them curious, so that they reach out to you because they want to know more about how you're going to solve their problem.
You know, the reason I started laughing at that, Jacob, is because I used to tell people when we started the very first job board in this region, and let me tell you, at that time, Career Builder and Monster were the only ones out, and Career Builder at that time was still called Career Mosaic. They were a software company. They weren't even a website yet. That's how far back I go. But people used to ask me, because we were absolute pioneers in this industry here in Houston, and Houston's, the 4th largest city in the nation. And I visited with a lot of very big, prominent companies, of which you would, of course, know, Exxon and Marathon, and before they were Continental Airlines, before they became United, and Compaq, before they became HP. I called on all these companies, and everywhere I went, they were very curious to know, but I used to tell them, hey, we're just a dating service. We hope that you're going to kiss on the first date, but you might not. We hope you get married. We hope you make little babies. That's not our business. As a job board, our business was to make an introduction. Hopefully it's successful. You shake hands, you bring somebody in, you start learning more about them. So your point was exactly correct. It's I mean, let's face it, the internet is about connecting. That's what the internet's about. The internet is the most elaborate, extensive library in the world for gathering information, but its primary and sole function is for people to connect. That is dating. That's dating. It's a dating service. We create committees, we create groups, we create networks. I mean, LinkedIn, that's nothing but a gigantic network. Facebook, you know, all of these different platforms are served to bring us closer together. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm in the dating business. I'm really hoping somebody's going to like you and want to call you up and say, yeah, I like a guy wearing a, of course, I know that the audience can't see this, but I want to meet this guy who wears a red shirt and, you know, is on the other side of a video screen. Now I want to meet in person. I'm describing you, by the way, just so the audience, they don't know what we're doing here. But anyway, that's what is important. So yes, I want you to provoke me. I want you to say something in your resume that's going to create a reason for me to call you. That's really fundamental. That's critically important.
Okay, and so I am now going to start telling people that if they are writing, you know, 3, 4, 5-page resumes, that they're basically doing the equivalent of the 19-year-old dude move on a date. You know?
Oh, okay. I'll accept that. I'll accept that. You just can't go out with all the guns blazing first time out. Now, I will tell you that I have a strategy, and my strategy in the process I work people through when I work with people in the job search piece, when they hire me bring me on as a coach and they become my client. The 3-step process is this. I require an accomplishments inventory, and that is the heavy lifting part of this process, after which we then create a short form resume, which is a 1-page document, after which we follow that with a long form resume, I mean that can be 2 and 3 and 4 pages. The fact is, if you get a call from somebody and they ask you for a resume, don't send the short form, send the long form. Go in with guns blazing. Tell them all about you. If they call you, if you know somebody who's going to make an introduction on your behalf, and that's why I say if by invitation or by introduction, you go in with your long form or traditional resume. If you're going online, if you're applying to a position, go with your short form to successfully navigate the software and to get the recruiter to call you. Now, all of my clients get this phone call, and I prep them for it. Hey, Jacob, I got your resume, but I need more information. And you say, Rick, listen, thank you for the call. I sent you my abbreviated short form resume to get your attention. Let me have your email address. I'll send you my long form or my traditional resume. And we create a dialogue. And you want to have that long form ready. And on that phone call, you say, hey, did you get it? Let's go ahead and start the interview right now. Don't let go of anybody that's potentially in a position to hire you. Keep them on the line.
Okay, and so sending the long form resume as your first introduction, is that what you see as the biggest mistake most job hunters are making today? Or is there something else that is a bigger mistake than that being made by today's job hunters?
Yeah, job seekers think it's all about them, and it's not. That's the answer to that question, and that is for time immemorial behind us and going forward. The biggest mistake is it's not about you. When you're applying for a job, let me tell you what, and this is something I really try to put across to young people, you put yourself in the position of the employer. Tell them what the employer wants to hear. And I don't mean just tell them, plan on producing. But the fact is, for you to go in and say, how many days off do I get a year? Do I get vacation? How much vacation do I get? What's the salary? What's the pay range? I have no time for you. Like I said earlier, my investment in you is my paycheck. And if I don't see you delivering, but the person who comes in and expresses the need to add value to the organization, who understands how expensive it is just to open the doors every morning, to turn on the lights, to get equipment, to obtain new software, to hire a support staff in support of, to have manufacturing and inventory. The person who recognizes that and how important that is the person who's going to get the job. They may not be the best candidate either. And I will tell you, 95% of all jobs do not go to necessarily the most qualified person. They go to the person who makes the best presentation and expressing this value. Now, I want to tell you something, Jacob, and it's a story I've put in my last 2 or 3 books. And yes, that's repetitive, but it's a valuable story. And the reason I tell you this is because, Well, let me tell you a story. You'll understand. I was when I was 18 years old. I grew up in a family hardware store. It was basically a general store, and we had shut that store down. And I graduated from high school, and I went to my first employment interview, and it was for a truck driver, helper, forklift driver. I was applying to work in a lumber yard. Now I showed up in a suit when everybody else there showed up in blue jeans and T-shirts, and that's in the days when everybody had their Marlboros and their, folded up in their short sleeve T-shirts. They had their hard hats on and their gloves in their back pocket. These were working men. And I was 18 years old, skinny as a rat. I walk in there, and I remember I can tell you candidly, Mr. Cordell Dykes interviewed me. And the only reason he gave me the job, I was so inappropriate and unprepared and inexperienced for this job. But I sat there at the age of 18 and I told Mr. Dykes, I said, Mr. Dykes, for every dollar you pay me, I'll give you back $10 in value. Now that's a true story. Mr. Dykes' eyebrow nearly hit the ceiling. I remember him just going, what? He didn't say a word. He just looked at me. And that eyebrow is sitting on the ceiling, and he reaches back and he grabs a hard hat, and he grabs a pair of gloves, and he throws them across the desk at me and says, be here at 7 in the morning. Well, at 7 the next morning, I showed up, and I ended up staying in that job until I left to join the U.S. Air Force. Now, the point is, I did not have that job. He was looking at me, who's this clown in a suit? Everybody else is ready to go to work, get on a forklift, get on a truck. I'm in a suit. That telling him I was going to add value for what he was going to pay me was the reason. And let me tell you what, I did work in the lumber yard. I did unload boxcars. I moved into a forklift. I moved into truck driving, and I eventually moved inside the retail store, and I da-da-da-da-da until such time as I left to join the Air Force. Honestly, going in and standing in that line, I had no business. Now, I'm using that story to illustrate, I don't care how young or how old you are, you go in, make the pitch for how you're going to bring value to the organization. You are a foot up on everybody else, regardless of their skill set, regardless of their experience. You just might get a chance.
Okay, so if I could try and sum this up, and you could tell me if this is accurate, one of the biggest mistakes that job hunters are making today is to thinking that it's all about them. Employers don't necessarily care or hire you because you need a job. They hire you because they have a problem and they think you can fix it.
Bingo. You just nailed it. I never hire anybody unless I have a problem. And the reason you nailed it, Jacob, is because I always tell people somewhere in the job posting they're expressing their pain. There is a problem. Identify that, read between the lines, and go in and express how you are the solution to that problem. That is exactly right. I don't need any problems. The only person that gets hired that I really don't want or maybe don't need is probably my son-in-law or my brother-in-law or somebody who I almost have to hire but I don't want to. And the fact is, as soon as that person is not performing, they're going to get out of the way too. We're going to kick them down the line, or we're going to give them a worse job. But, unless your daddy owns a business, you're not just coming in. You're going to come in because you are going to address their problem. You are the solution. Let me prove it to you. That's how you do it. Don't say I'm a hardworking, motivated, up to the challenge individual. We don't talk like that. We come in and say, look, you got a problem. Listen, let's put it this way. Let's say I own a restaurant, a really nice upscale restaurant, and my valet parking is running people off. That's a problem. So when I start interviewing for a valet parking company or a valet parking manager, I'm going to wait to hear the person that's going to say, I can bring a smile to your customer. I'll treat their cars well. I'll get them parked well. I'll bring them back well. I'm going to make money on the back end with all the tips, and you have no problem. Because let me tell you what, that valet parking at a restaurant is the very first contact the customer has with somebody associated with your operation. It's the same as a receptionist. That's the first person that we talk to when we call a business. That person we talk to on the phone is our first contact with that business. They have to be the very best possible so that we want to continue to do business. And what does that mean? That creates revenue.
Okay. And so you're going to be able to convey some of this in your resume when you reach out to them and you're telling your story. So you got to make sure that you really read the job descriptions and tailor your resume to solve the problem that you would see in the job description. So how does one necessarily go about that? How does one scan the resume? I mean, not the resume, but the job description to figure out exactly what is the pain point and then tailor their resume to that?
Okay, Jacob, I'll tell you what, that's a good question and it's really important, but I'm the first person to tell you, you do not want to write a new resume for every job application. Now, when you're online, that's important because you got to fill, all the fields out, and you have to go, until you populate this field, you can't move to the next field. I understand all that. Applications are really powerful, they're strong, they're hard to work with, they're very difficult, they're very time consuming, which is why more and more companies are accepting LinkedIn as a resume. You can send a link to your LinkedIn profile, which is why your LinkedIn profile has to be buffed. It has to be perfect. The new resume and the new recommendation letter is LinkedIn. So that's another discussion we could have another time. But the fact is, once again, if you go back to rickgillis.com/resume format, look at my short form resume, you'll see that it's designed not to be changed for every job and every pain point. What you do change, see, I have a custom header. I have a seeking statement. Now, that's a very important piece. Like I said earlier, it's not that big 200, 300-word objective statement or summary of qualifications a lot of people waste their time putting on a resume. It says, I am seeking a position as a chemical engineer for ABC Company, reference number 12345. That's it. One sentence. Let the recruiter know exactly which job you were applying to. Make it easy for me to know who to sort this to, which hiring manager, which department this goes to. So many people don't put what they're really seeking on a resume, and as a result, recruiters go crazy having to read through this stuff and go, oh, finally, this guy wants to be in the mailroom. No, he probably didn't, but that's what was pulled out of this thing. So this is important on the short form resume. Now, after that, after the seeking statement, then I have my objective statement, which says this exactly, and it addresses that pain point you're talking about. My objective statement says something to the effect of, and this is exactly what you'll see in the book and in the samples on my website. As a result of my experience, education, and skills, I am capable of. And then you write out one sentence that addresses the pain in that job posting. And that's it. That's it. As a result of my skills, experience, and education, I am capable of generating new revenues, boom, 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 whatever that is. Then I go to the 4 accomplishments that are going to prove that statement that I extracted from the accomplishments worksheet. Then I'm going to go with an abbreviated employment history, which is going to show that I have prior experience that suits this. And then I'm going to go to my education and a very small amount of honors and awards. And lastly, I'm going to hit those keywords. Now, once again, that keyword section, and by the way, Jacob, I'll tell you, a lot of people are really skeptical about this keywords piece in a resume. Let me explain something. There's no rules to resumes. There is no rule. There are several things you should understand about a resume that could hurt you and have your resume kicked out of consideration. For instance, the software does not accept tables. It does not accept script and logos. It does not accept artwork. That little line you put across the page on your resume under your contact information, just that really attractive little formatting line, some softwares read that as a page break and go on to the next resume. So there are a lot of rules that are all written up. I've got every one of these in my book that will explain to you why this is the case. But the fact is, resume filtering software is arbitrary and it's a pain. It's difficult. CIO.com said it's the bane of all job seekers. I agree with that. So anyway, when you get to the bottom, these keywords, a lot of people are skeptical until I tell them, go to apple.com and apply for a job at apple.com. And if you have an iTunes account, you can at least go into Apple and look at their job postings and just arbitrarily pick one and scroll through the application. They have a field in there for keywords. Apple.com has a keywords section, and that's what it is. It's just keywords, and it allows you to put in 200 characters. And you take those straight out of the job posting, so you match. So whereas a lot of people, and if it comes down to it and somebody says, what's this keywords thing down here? Blame it on me. I don't care. It's not going to hurt my feelings. Blame it on me. You saw some kid you saw some clown on Jacob's, career hunting website that said, hey, extract keywords from the job posting. Blame it on me. I don't care. You know what? If somebody called you, if somebody's talking to you and said, what's with these keywords? Guess what? You got a dialogue started. That's all I want you to get. That's all you're going to get from a resume is a dialogue. If somebody calls and says, why'd you do it this way? I mean, I've had people that flat told me that I have one guy who got hired by a global corporation, energy, oil, gas, gold mining. I don't mind him telling you who it was, BHP Billiton. Look them up. They're out of Australia. They're global. And he had fully 30% of his page covered in keywords, 30% of a one-page document covered in keywords. And it's because he was an IT professional. And he had all kinds of anagrams and all kinds of information he wanted to put there, every certification in software. He got the call, and the first thing they said is, they tossed his resume at him and said, what's this? And he said, hey, it got me here, didn't it? And he got the job. He got the job. So there's no rules to resumes. However, there are formatting dictates. And those are very, very important that you understand and recognize. You know, no photographs. The person who puts that 34-point bold header on their resume, the person that just graduated, who puts it up there 34-point and bold, it's really big on the page, that's going to get your resume rejected. You're not even going to be considered because it will not accept, the software will not accept a font probably over 16, 18 points.
Okay, and so I want to get some clarification because you brought up the keywords quite a bit. And so some of the suggestions that I've heard of in the past, and I'm thinking that you are taking a slightly modified approach or slightly different approaches to put the keywords in throughout the resume, whereas you're saying just have a section full of keywords, and that's what's going to help get you past the software, so you're not writing awkwardly worded statements in order to get keywords in there. You're getting in the words that provide value, and then you put in the keywords that the software is going to recognize to move you forward.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And let me tell you what, I prefer that you be highly efficient in your job search and be able to get out 10 or 15 applications a day, resumes submitted a day, versus 1 or 2 a day if you're rewriting your resume every time for every application. That's ludicrous. That's ludicrous. All you have to do, you know, you're rewriting your software. And let me tell you, this is one of those things that drives me crazy because I see all these certifications for certified resume writer. Well, what does that mean? That means somebody sent some money to some organization, they got a certificate. There's no such thing as a certified resume. There is no standard for resumes. No such thing exists in the world anywhere. So that said, why don't we go with efficiency? Why don't we go with, see, I helped grow this business back in 1997. I watched us build, and I can tell you exactly how I came up with keywords, this whole strategy, but we don't have enough time for this. For me to do that. However, I can tell you how I came up with this, why I came up with this, and once again, I wouldn't tell you that because I don't want people to get any bad ideas because the original technology was much more simpler and not near as intelligent as it is now. This software is almost becoming artificial intelligence. That combined with big data is creating some enormously sophisticated, powerful resume filtering software.
Well, okay, and there's only one more question that I wanted to follow up with your statements about resumes. So we want to make sure that the resume is tailored to show that we're going to solve the pain or the problem of the company, but at the same time you're stating that you don't want to, you know, custom write each individual resume. So how do you apply to multiple companies, and maybe you're looking, as some job hunters, you're looking for different positions because, you know, you're just trying to find something quick. So how do you tailor the resume to, you know, show that you're going to solve a problem if it's not custom tailored to each company and position?
You will have done this as a result of that accomplishments. Now, I will tell you that when I'm working with a client, I've told you that I want to pull 4 accomplishments from that accomplishment worksheet. You may find that for this application, because here's the deal. When you work my short form resume, you're going to modify the seeking statement every time. I am seeking a position with. You're going to change that out. That has to be, by the way, the company name does count in the resume filtering software. Because people ask me, well, why did you say I'm seeking a job with Dell Computer Company? Doesn't the recruiter know they're sitting at Dell Computer Company? Well, yes, but the software gives you a point up. At least one. Some of the softwares will give you 2 points up for using the name in the resume. That's a fact. Um, you're going to change the seeking statement. You're going to modify the objective statement, which addresses that problem right there. You may massage those accomplishments, and instead of using 1, 2, 3, and 4 from your list, you may decide that this position would better be served by using 1, 2, 7, 8, and modifying those to discuss that position specifically, to say, I did this previously, therefore it fits this. Now, my experience says that generally your top 4 accomplishments you don't need to change. However, to go another piece, because that's really a good question, Jacob, particularly, like you said, for the person who's just looking for any job and or the brand new either high school or entry-level college graduate who is just looking for that first opportunity. This is where your accomplishments are going to be more generic, if you will. And I don't mean that in a nasty way, but say, I have no problem telling college students to use a specific class that they did really well in that would support a job posting. For instance, let's say I'm looking for a landscape architecture position and I have no experience yet, but I really did well in my landscape architectural classes. The forming, the formatting, the CAD design work, all that kind of stuff supported it. You can extract that stuff, and that'll be very broad. That'll be very broad, because what you're really talking about here is broader accomplishments than pinpoint specific for the more professional. In other words, somebody who has 15 years experience and is looking to move into a management or make a change to another company and utilizing these accomplishments, they're going to be more pinpoint. If you're an engineer, it's been engineering, an architect's been architecting, a lawyer who's been lawyering, you're going to want your accomplishments to be specific. So all this does work, and once again, and I hate to deflect it, but if we need, I do a full day workshop on this stuff. Go to the job book. It really is well explained in there. And let me tell you another thing too, Jacob. I take email from people. I'm an open networker on LinkedIn. I accept everybody's invitation, hopefully not to recommend or reference anybody, but hopefully that I can make a connection for somebody throughout my connections. But people are always surprised that I answer my phone and I respond when somebody needs some support and help. So, now until you've read the book, and by the way, I have a new video series out now, which is the job book on video. It's available through my website. It'll shortly, in the next 60 days or so, based on whenever this appears, probably by Christmas 2014, this video should be on Amazon, and it is the job book. And so I'm going to refer you back to the job book. The question's answered in there.
Okay. And hopefully I'm not trying to ask everything that's going to be in the book, because I want people to go out and buy the book. And
no, let's do it. I'm happy to share. I'm happy.
Okay. And so another thing that I found surprising, because it seemed to have gone against everything that I have been told, starting from high school and throughout college, is about the cover letter. Everybody graduating from college is told you need a cover letter and a resume. And you need to submit that together, and then you go to the stores, you get the resume folders, and there's 2 slots, one for your cover letter and resume. But in watching your videos, you mentioned that, employers, they don't want to, waste their time reading your cover letters, and that, and hopefully I'm not taking away everything, but if they ask for a cover letter, it's just to see if you can follow instructions, not so much that they actually want to read it. So
that's correct.
Okay, and so with that, is that throughout all industries or specific industries, or where do you see, I guess, in giving advice, cover letters, is there any place where they're still important and effective, or have they just been completely killed off altogether and only used to see if you can follow instructions?
No. They're not killed off. They're not killed off. And that's really what you're asking me, is to give a blanket statement for every recruiter out there. Some recruiters, I'm sure, love cover letters. The fact is, most cover letters are so badly written, they're not read. Now, I've been asking recruiters this around the nation for years. Do you review cover letters? Do you read them? And it's 99 to 1, no. No, they don't. What it is, like you just said, fundamentally, and I've hired people before, and I have said submit resume and cover letter to, and those resumes that I receive without a cover letter, I throw them in the trash. I don't even consider them, and figuratively in the trash, delete them, whatever. I will not, because that means they can't follow my very first instruction, And that's what most cover letters are. Now, the fact is, most people write a very bad cover letter. It's usually nothing more than a reiteration of what's already on the resume. So why don't I go to the resume? Now, I will tell you, those people who do look at cover letters, those recruiters have told me many, many times, they usually look at it this way. They look at the resume. I'm figuratively on one paper. Look at the resume, and then I'll fold the cover letter back and look at it and go, yeah, that's okay. But let me tell you what, for the most part, your cover letter is tossed off, it's shredded. The resume is what's kept. The resume is scanned. It goes into the archive. It'll go into, because in the future, once again, another reason for keywords, in the future, I may not call you right now, but I may go scanning my resume database in the future and just hit 10 or 15 keywords, and here your resume comes popping up because it has those keywords in there. So that can happen as well. So there's a lot of value in keywords. But no, I stand by the cover letter. That's another thing I love to see, these certified resume writers. They also write certified cover letters. What does that mean? There's no such thing. You know, a cover letter should say, basically, and I did address cover letters in my last book. I don't even bother with it in this book because I know the facts. And like I said, I want this to be a short, quick, to the point read. But the cover letter should say, basically, the same as a thank you card or a thank you letter after you leave an interview. It should say, I am the right person for this job. I meet these qualifications. I look forward to hearing from you shortly. That's what it should say. Those 3 pieces, 3 little short paragraphs. Once again, cover letters, I've seen them where they go on 5, 6, 7 pages, and they're just bleeding, sweating, need and desperation, and that's a bad place to be. And that's a very bad place to be. By the way, Jacob, let me go ahead and let's talk to your audience real quick about thank you letters, because this is one of my key positives. And I've had so many people win because of this. My clients are required, I don't care the level of position, top of the top, bottom of the bottom. My clients are required to leave a thank you letter at the time of the interview. Not sending a letter after the fact, not sending an email. I have my clients take 4x5 panel cards with them to the interview. Carry them in a portfolio, carry them in your car, whatever. I wish I had one out here because I have a bunch of them because I write thank you cards all the time. And they're very, very impactful. But my client will have a box, and these are very inexpensive. Go to Target, Walmart, Office Depot. $9.95 will get you a box of 24 of these things, envelopes and cards. Little 4x5. They're like thank you cards, but they don't have, just get blank, plain ones. As soon as you're done, go out in the lobby, sit down, write your thank you card to the person you just interviewed with. Make sure you get their business card, which let me give you a little hint. You're not going to get a business card from a recruiter. They don't want you to be able to get a hold of you after the fact. So while you're at the interview, make sure you get their name spelled exactly correctly. John, is that Jon or John? Steele, is that Steele or no E? Okay, great, John Steele. Write it down. There's nothing wrong with that. You're writing it on the portfolio. You're going to have it in front of you. You're going to be writing this thing down. This is going to be with all those questions you're going to ask at the interview, which, by the way, is another mandatory part of the interview. You have to go in with pre-written questions. Recruiters get very upset when you're not prepared, you haven't done your homework. You're going to write down these names, and I don't care if it's a panel interview. There's 5 people. You write down all their names, and then you're going to go outside. You're going to sit in the lobby. You're going to sit in your car, and you're going to write a thank you card to every single person. You're going to put their name on the envelope. And by the way, take that whole box of 24 because you're going to screw up 5 of them to write 6. I promise. I throw away 1 thank you card for I throw away 1 for every one I write. It seems like I'm always on screwing something up, misspelling, bad handwriting, whatever. Walk right back into the receptionist, hand these cards to him or her and say, would you please give these to Mr. Johnson? I just had an interview with him. They're going to go, what? And they're going to look at you. They're going to go, what? And say, yeah, it's just a little thank you for having taken the time to see me. Turn around and walk out the door. Now, let's say the next person just came into the interview after I have finished my interview, and the receptionist walks in and says, hey, that guy you just had in here, he just left this for you. Now, I sit back and I open this thing up. Guess what? The next interview is crushed. That person's already in the dirt. They don't have a chance. See, the thing is, what you're doing is you're making an impact. You're showing me what kind of an employee you would be working for me by being so on top of things. The email thank you note is not elegant. It's just not classy. The snail mail letter that you sent after the fact probably arrived 2 or 3 days after they made their decision. Doing it on the spot has enormous power. So there's a freebie for your audience. I tell everybody that, and I stand by it. I don't care the position. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. Men don't like to do that. Do it. It works.
Okay, and so with that, what I'm getting from you, and again, hopefully I'm interpreting this right, but as a job hunter, you almost have to think like a marketer. You need to get your name in front of them more than just once on your resume, and that's part of what the thank you card does. Is it refreshes your name in their mind, and the more they see your name, it's kind of like seeing the same TV commercial a million times. They feel like they start to get to know you, what you're about, and it's part of your marketing campaign to them.
I guess you could look at it that way, but I think it's more than marketing now. I think this is hard sales. This is past marketing. This is selling. You're selling yourself. And yeah, to keep your name in front of them. But like I told you earlier, all of the clients I work with, my goal is that they be the most compelling and memorable person. So at the end of the day, when the recruiting manager sits down with the department heads or whatever and says, you know, I interviewed 6 people today, this is the person I like the best. And it's because of, they're going to say why? And say, well, because he was on point, he was prepared. See, the accomplishments inventory preps you for the interview. Every time somebody says, so tell me about a time when you were working with a team and one of the members fell off maybe and you had to pick up the slack. How did you handle that? Well, when you have done this accomplishments inventory, I don't require, when I'm working with somebody, it's not just the accomplishment. It's telling me the whole story behind it. To tell you a quick illustration, I worked with a woman who had a chemical engineer who had left the jobs, left the employment world for 12 years to raise a family. She decided she was going to go back into engineering, which she has done very successfully, and I'm very proud to have helped her get there. But the point is, she came to me with 18 accomplishments and a full page handwritten on every accomplishment. Who, what, where, when, why, on budget, on time, everything she needed to know about each one. Because that's what I put my people through. This is the heavy lifting part of my job search process. I'm prepping you to nail that interview. I'm prepping you for all eventualities. So she hands me these 18 pages, and I glance at it, and I glance, and I glance, and I looked at her, and I turned around, and I handed them all back. And she goes, well, aren't you going to read them? And I said, no, that wasn't for me. That was for you. And after 12 years of being out of the business, she landed a kind of a mid-level job, not top, but now it's 3 years later. She's the top of her game. She's already gotten a heck of a raise, some crazy benefits, and she's in charge of 2 groups. She's very successful. But it all came down to being prepped for that interview.
Okay. And, I know we're starting to, come up against the clock here. So I'm going to try and get on a couple of more questions here. One thing that I found interesting is you talked about mobile apps and one of the talks that you've given, and how in some areas you can type in your keywords and it'll tell you that a job is around the corner and 2 floors up. How much is those mobile apps spreading, or is it still just localized to one area? And can you give us an example of 2 apps that may be available for more of the mass public nationwide?
The answer is no, I can't. And I'll tell you why. Because that app you were specifically talking about, it was some little piece I saw, and it was specifically for San Francisco and Silicon Valley, which makes a ton of sense. Because let's face it, there's a whole lot of programmers, developers walking around out there, and they can go in and get the app, and they say, wow, there's 2 jobs down the street. I'm going to go in and try, see if I can leave off my resume or whatever. So what this is on a website, and I promote this website to job seekers, although it's a recruiter's website. It's called ERE.net. That stands for Electronic Recruiters, and I forget the last E, but it's ERE.net. And that's where I see this stuff. They have the most fabulous leading edge information on that website. And I'm signed up, and I get at least 2 emails from them every single day, and I read them. They're really, really good from a recruiter's point of view. Which job seekers, that's why I recommend looking at that, at least while you're in the job search mode, see what's really current. A better question, a better way to promote and talk about the different apps available to you, Jacob, is to say that I also tell people, go out and Google job search and apps, or job search and social media, and look at what's most current. Because I'll tell you what, and I know I said this in that clip, I don't know if it was in that clip, but I say it when I'm speaking live. What I tell you today about social media may not be accurate tomorrow. That's just all there is to it. What I will say about social media is it requires a lot of forethought. It requires a lot of planning. You know, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, these are all platforms, social media platforms that develop, they see an arc and a curve over a period of time. And so then I can go back and look at you and follow you and see if I like you, if I want to hire you, et cetera, et cetera. The forethought requires in making sure that when you send somebody a link or you send somebody a connection to one of your platforms, that it is ready for them to be looking at, and you're going to be proud of the fact that it is ready and it's professional. So social media in job search requires forethought. You know, if you got those spring break vacation photos from last year, maybe you better take them down. You've already heard all that stuff before. The fact is, what are you going to do for me? Is that expressed in there? Is your blog, your website, whatever you're using, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, are those up to speed? And talk to me as an employer why I want to bring you on board.
Okay, and just to touch a little bit here on social media, when using that, now you mentioned Facebook, and everybody has the privacy settings and everything. When you're using Facebook as part of your job search, as part of your online profile, do you recommend actually, going ahead and using your profile, or would you create a Facebook page in order to demonstrate as your professional image to the company? And I guess the broader question is, what is one or two of the best practices for using social media to find jobs and demonstrate your qualifications to the employers?
Well, first and foremost, LinkedIn. LinkedIn really is. I just did a blog post for CIO.com, and I spoke to LinkedIn is the new recommendation letter. Those testimonials or recommendations you get on LinkedIn are really powerful. They're read. Like I said, I sent out, once again, going back to ERE.net, I sent out a questionnaire, just a single question to the entire online group one time. This was last year. And I asked, will you accept a LinkedIn link in lieu of a resume? And the response was 50% of the answers came back and said, we already do. And that their applicant tracking systems, in other words, their resume filtering, et cetera, already accepts LinkedIn as a profile. That's fair. And the other 50% said they are not currently doing so, but we're going to or are looking into it. So LinkedIn is mandatory, absolutely mandatory. Everything else, you really can't go and do. You could do a Facebook page, but I don't know how you would really put the value into that thing without, because Facebook takes time. Facebook is a thing where it's days, weeks, months, years. And when you're out there, you want to make sure that all the information you want is available. Now, you could post your resume on there, but then if somebody else puts a posting on top of that and you start answering stuff, it gets pushed down, pushed down, pushed down. You could put it off to the side in a profile, and that could do it. But I'm going to tell you, LinkedIn is number one. Now, let me tell you what, LinkedIn is number one today, like Monster was 10, 15 years ago. I don't know what's going to be in the future, and that's why I always say go Google social media and job search and find out what else is out there. But right now and for the foreseeable future, LinkedIn is where you have to be.
Okay, so LinkedIn is of course, the leader in the platform for professionalism, and all the other profiles on Twitter, Google Plus, Facebook. I mean, they're not really being looked at, but it's still breadcrumbs for them to try and see
I'll tell you what,
more about you, but they're not important when compared to LinkedIn.
Let's qualify that. They're not as important. However, they are being looked at because Google is your first background check. Before somebody goes and hires a company to do a professional background check on you, Google is your first background check. That's why I tell people LinkedIn is the new resume. Google is the new background check. Google is going to find you in all those different platforms, and if there's something out there that could work against you, then it's going to hurt you. And then the company hasn't spent any money. Now listen, when they're doing this stuff, they're not going into your private stuff. And if anybody asks you for a password in an interview, reject it categorically. Do not allow somebody to have your passwords. That's all there is to it. I would never give anybody passwords to any of my pages, period. However, I can go nevertheless on Google and go look at your public profiles, those pages, those parts of your pages that you're allowing the public to see. So that is the first thing. And let me tell you what, a lot of determination can be made right there not to hire you. to go ahead and exclude you from consideration. If you make it through that, then perhaps I may go ahead and hire the professional background check. You're going to have to sign an application at that point, because background checks are done under the purview of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and it is a legal document. You have to sign that before you do it. So make sure if anybody does a background check, you have signed. It's in the application. The application is, your formal paper application is a legal document. Make sure you read everything before you sign anything on it.
Okay, so just for clarification, while Facebook, Twitter, Google Plus are not profiles in which you would build up to apply for jobs or to impress, you do want to make sure that you go through there so it's not used against you. So it's kind of, and that's where we're getting at. It's just make sure it's not used against you, but it's not where you're going to build up your professional platform for employers to make the hiring decision from. And one thing that was also mentioned here is that with social media, you're not the main point is to connect with people and maybe not so much to apply for the job.
Correct.
So, and not everybody is an open networker on LinkedIn or, Facebook, Twitter, and all of that. So what would you say is the best advice or for approaching, the hiring managers, the recruiters, and HR professionals on social media to start making that connection to build rapport with them?
Well, I'll tell you what. I did an interview that's available on my LinkedIn profile, which is just Rick Gillis on LinkedIn. I did an interview with Business Insider here a couple of years ago at businessinsider.com, and it's still available. You can see it. It's a very good interview, and I really like it that they edited and kept that piece, because what I have done to attract media to me over the years is I will go on LinkedIn and I will go to a company, click on all employees, and I'll start scanning through that company until I find the recruiters or I find the department heads, the department managers that I want to work with, and I will then pull up their profile and look at it. And then I will look next to the side of that, it says other people who viewed Jacob also viewed, and there's a bunch of people down there, and I'll start clicking on all those people. Now what happens is, and this is a strategy. This is not something, I'm not going to tell you to do this every day. This is a strategy. Because when you go back and look at your LinkedIn profile and it says people who viewed you, and all of a sudden you see me, and you go, well, that's curious. So then you click on me, and you look at what's Rick Gillis got, what's he about, what does he do, all that stuff. Well, when I see that you have clicked on me, I then send you an invitation saying, hey, Jacob, saw you were looking at my profile. I would love to work with you. Any chances we could talk? Sincerely, Rick Gillis. Now, that is a strategy. It's a tactic I have taught. It's worked. I had one client I worked with. He got some 18 contacts back that way over the course of 2 weeks from companies he had never interviewed with and never been in touch with. And ultimately, he did get hired as a result of that strategy. Now, the other thing is, just to use LinkedIn, step it up, and it is expensive to step up to premium. It's expensive annually. But if you're a job seeker, or if you're passively seeking, in other words, you're working and you're looking for another job, spend the money, because then you have InMail that you can send, and you can send direct requests to people. Hey, I'm interested in your company. I meet the criteria. I think you'd be interested in talking with me. I can add value to the organization. Can we talk sometime soon? Sincerely, Rick Gillis. So, and if they don't respond to you, LinkedIn gives you that InMail credit back. Because I think in my level, I get 10 InMail a month that I can use, and I rarely use that many. But there are job search packages on LinkedIn for this purpose.
Okay. And then, just wanting to make sure I get everything in here. We hear off and on over the years about blogging, blog sites, and everything. So from an employer standpoint, how important or how helpful is having your own blog site and blogging about, your knowledge or experience in a particular industry? Is that something that job recruiters actually find valuable and will make hiring decisions from, or is that just more wasting your time as a job hunter blogging versus just hosting a resume on there?
Yeah, don't blog unless you really want to do it. Blogging's a lot of work. You know, everybody told me when I started my blog, oh, Rick, you only got to do a paragraph a day. Bull, you can't put a thought out in a paragraph. So you're going to end up putting a lot of time and effort into it. So first of all, I'm going to recommend don't go and blog unless you really got something you want to talk about. Number two, if you're blogging for job search, you're almost always going to have to be talking about your topic, which may get pretty mundane and pretty boring. So once again, if your heart's not in it, don't do it. It's better not to go and blog, and then I look at it and I see you haven't done a new post in 2 years. That's not a good thing. My blog, if you look at my blog, I'm exceptionally random. I'll go a couple of months not doing anything, then I'll hit 4 or 5 posts in a row because I have this little brainstorm, or I have other things that I'm doing that I want to promote that I did on Twitter or somewhere else. I wrote an article somewhere and I put it on there. But blogging is a strong support. It's not going to be, the recruiters might view it, but it's going to be the department manager, that person you would report to, who's really going to look at it closely and see if what you're adding is unique and of interest. Because if you're just saying the same old stuff that they know and it's not necessarily new and fresh, you know, that's really, I'll deflect that question back to you, Jacob, and say that's really something that's got to be personal choice.
Okay. And all right, and one thing here, and I've been, holding back. I've really wanted to ask you this question. This is probably something that has been, the most interest, because I don't think I understood what you meant by this. You mentioned gamification. And so what is gamification as it relates to job searching? Can you explain that? Because I've heard that term before, but I don't really understand what it means and how it's going to apply to a job search.
That was a mosquito that just went by, so excuse me. Gamification is the future of job search, and that's what I'm talking about. Gamification is where, and let me give you a very simple, basically it's kind of like building a simulated city. You remember Sim Cities here several years ago, or Farmville, those kind of things. What it is, let's say that I'm American Express and I've created a gamification. I'm utilizing gamification to hire my next college recruiting class. I mean my college interns, those people I want to bring out of college directly. I could go to the University of California, University of Texas, anywhere, and I could invite the entire senior business class to come into my American Express game and play the game. They can actually participate. And the reason for this is because, for instance, one of my sons is really big into gaming, and he games with other young people all over the world. South Africa, Ireland, UK, Canada, whatever. He's gaming with people all over the world. Well, the big companies look at this and saying, how do you communicate with young people? You communicate where they communicate, where they gather. Gamification is that place. So I set up a game where you come in and you play in the American Express offices. But while you're gamed, you're being assessed. We're determining metrics on your ability to get along well with others, to make a decision, to react and act, to take charge of a situation. And the winners then, now listen, this is kind of in my head right now. I don't know if this is going on just yet to this level, but I don't think we're far away. The idea is then that we would then reach out, American Express would reach out to those winners and say, you won the game, we'd like to conduct an interview with you. Would you be interested in talking with us here at American Express? That's what gamification means, at least as I see it in my head. But I'm watching all this. Artificial intelligence, job search, big data is all coming together, and it's all everything comes back to job search. All the skill sets, all the new software, all the new hardware, everything always comes back to job search because people can monetize what they're creating in the job search platforms.
Okay, that does provide a lot of clarification for me on that, and so, thank you for answering the gamification. And so, that seems more directed towards the youth and new hires rather than your, 55-year-old seasoned professional.
That's correct.
And so, now, here's something I, didn't hear you talk about or haven't put in, or mention before. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on this. When you go to networking events or you're out and about and you meet someone, and you hand them your business card or your contact card as a job hunter, on that card when you hand it to them, would you recommend people putting QR codes on them? where it's the big square, and
I
that you
used to
scan
use
it with.
QR codes. Yeah, I'm very familiar with this.
Yeah,
I actually had them on the back of my book when I first came to the job book. I took it off. It doesn't work. No, I wouldn't. QR codes are really good for retail purposes. Nobody's going to scan that. It's cute, and it had its day 2 or 3 years ago. But except for retail utility now, they're not popular. So I wouldn't go with it. In other words, I mean, I'm as plugged in and as touch as anybody, and I don't keep a QR reader on my phone because that's what it requires. It requires me to take an action. And if I have to take an action beyond a business card or a resume, I'm not going to do it.
Okay, because as far as the QR reader, everybody has a barcode scanner on their smartphone now and use it with Amazon and eBay and all that. But so the reason why I brought that up is because I've heard some suggestions and advice before about putting QR codes on the business card so that they scan it and it takes them directly to your LinkedIn profile where they can connect with you, which seemed easier than them trying to search for you on LinkedIn and everything. But you don't see that working today. That's something that has come and gone, or would that still be?
I think except for retail, QR codes are yesterday's technology. I really do. Listen, it's easy for me to say LinkedIn / Rick Gillis. Go find me there. I'm not a fan of QR codes. I'm really not. I don't see the utility of that. Now, listen, I'm not, once again, let's go back to one thing I will say. There's no rules in job search. The only rule there is in job search is do not lie and do not misrepresent. Do not lie, do not misrepresent. Other than that, there's no rules in job search. Really, if you know somebody, if your best friend's dad can hire you, go do it. And everybody's competing. So there's no rules. Just don't lie, don't misrepresent as far as your skills, education, capabilities, and skill set.
So with there being no rules, then it's whatever works. Some people, some areas, QR codes may work. Other people, other areas, they may do a Facebook, unpublished post and target, the managers and recruiters. And, maybe that's part of that hard sells part of job searching where while other people are just submitting resumes that are getting stuck in HR piles, you're getting a Facebook ad on the mobile phone of the hiring manager, and that may show that you have more tenacity to go after them and prove that you want that job more than anybody else, and then here's how I'm going to solve your problem.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying. The fact is, most people, I have asked a lot of recruiters, how many creative resumes have you ever received in your career of reviewing resumes? And I have yet to talk with one recruiter who has received something creative. Like you just said, a Facebook ad. There's some great stories. Go Google creative resumes online. You will find some amazingly fabulous stuff. Most recruiters will never see any one of those in a career. Most recruiters, I can tell you right now, everybody is so hard and driven by that one page, that one document that has to say it all, they don't get creative. So, yeah, I mean, if it's QR code works for you, great. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm just saying it's a pretty dated technology now. I mean, if that's the case, I'd rather go with Snapchat or Instagram or Square or anything else besides that. I'd go with something more current. QR, and listen, what you're talking about here are job search tactics and techniques, strategies perhaps. It's not the common down the road kind of middle of the road kind of stuff. Also, too, the company you're applying to may or may not appreciate this kind of stuff. If it's an ad agency, they want to see creativity. If you're applying to Saatchi & Saatchi in New York, you better be creative. If you're applying to Chevron or ExxonMobil, they want traditional. So you need to keep that all in mind as well.
Okay, and so I don't know if you'll agree with this statement, but something that I have gathered here is part of the problem people have is that they're being told and taught rules to a situation or a function that really doesn't have any rules as far as what you should do to get noticed and get the job, other than the two, be honest, be honest and don't misrepresent yourself. Other than that, there are no rules, but people are being told here are the rules, and that's probably what some of the problems are. Do you agree with that statement, or?
Well, yeah, I do fundamentally. I guess what you've got to know is you've got to know you've got to stay on target, and you've got to know what your end game is. That's what it's about. Whatever it takes you to get around there, whether it's a straight line or curving and swooping and swerving, that's what it takes. So, yeah, there's no rules. There's no rules. Don't lie. Don't misrepresent. When you get there, be prepared to deliver.
Okay, so just like everything else, the top 5% of successful people are those who will do what 95% of others won't, or, won't do, to get noticed. Because,
luck is 95% preparation.
Yeah, because when you really think about it, when you really think about it, each job posting is going to have about hundreds to thousands of applicants, and so the one who can stand out from the pile is most likely to get noticed and get the job.
Okay, let's talk about that real quick. And I'll tell you what, Jacob, I'm going to have to wrap this up pretty quickly, but let's talk about that, because I could get anywhere from 300 to 600 to 2,000 resumes for a job posting. However, the resume, every recruiter wants to get on. Let me tell you what, I talk with a lot of recruiters. I stay in touch with these people. I have a lot of very senior level recruiters as well as entry level recruiters going into the business. And I ask these questions of them when I go to these HR conferences. And the fact is, I could get 300 resumes that made it through the resume filtering. I may have gotten 600, but 300 made it. They all tell me they usually stop at the first 100. So timing is as essential and important. And I will tell you, if you're in job search, active job search, you should set up a job search alert for every company you want to be informed. As soon as they put up a posting, statistically, the first resume comes in within 200 seconds of the posting going up. Within 3.5 minutes, the first resume comes in. Now, that's assuming it made it through the resume filtering software. So those first 100 that come in, they usually get pulled and examined. If they don't find some winners in there, which they're going to, but if they don't, then they may go look at the next 100. But that's what recruiters tell me. They're not going to go, even if they have 600, 6,000, at a certain point, they stop. They just stop. They say, let's pull those first 100. So timing is just as essential as what you send.
Okay. And even though I would want to follow up on that, setting alerts, we are up against the clock here. So one last thing here. Do you have any special sites or, web tools that you would recommend, to the job hunters, maybe just, the top one or two?
Yeah, I have two that I recommend everywhere I go. Link Up. Don't confuse that with LinkedIn. Link Up, LINKUP, my favorite job board in the whole world. Link Up is they scrape jobs from corporate jobs. In other words, career pages on major companies. They scrape those jobs. They dump their entire data every night. They put up brand new data so the jobs are never stale. Number two, I recommend Quint Careers, QUINT, careers.com. Quint Careers stands for quintessential. It is one of the most in-depth, covering all aspects of job search websites that I know of. I know the proprietors personally, Dr. Randall Hansen and his wife, Dr. Catherine Hansen. They taught business at the University of Central Florida. Now they're up in Washington State, and they maintain an amazing job site. I don't even know where they find all the hours to do what they do. The site goes so deep. You want to look up keywords for chemical engineering, they'll probably have it on that site. Seriously. Or there'll be a link to a college that has keywords. There are gathering. You can go look up keywords chemical engineer, keywords lawyer, keywords, and you'll find all kinds of stuff. It's out there and available for you.
Okay. Thank you for that. And one last question for you. And that is, for people who have seen this video, have watched this, and are interested in connecting with you, what is the best way for people to reach out and connect with you?
RickGillis.com. That's my website. And if they want to reach to me personally, I have a contact page there. It comes straight into my personal email, so that's the best and easiest, no question.
Okay, and thank you for coming on to the show. I know this was a great interview, and I know the audience is going to appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, and you have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
I hope you were able to get a lot of great information out of that interview on some techniques that you can use and ways that you can write your resume in order to give yourself a leg up in your job search, in your desire to land that career in that specific industry, in that specific job, or that specific company. And as we go through here, I mean, there is a lot of actionable items that have come out in the last 2 interviews. And hopefully you're able to implement those items to land your dream job. Now, as I stated, 2 things here. The next show that I'm going to do is going to be interviewing a career search expert in the field of recent college graduates. It's actually going to be someone who's in a college career office at Iowa State University. I interviewed her about how, those people without experience who are just getting out of college, what they can do in order to land the job, things that you can do while you're still in college to be able to set yourself up for great success in your career search, and how to make some contacts. So that is going to be great information for those of you who are still in college, and even if you're still in high school and you're watching this. All right, that's going to be great information there. So don't miss the next episode. I'm still trying to figure out whether I want to keep these as weekly episodes or if I want to start doing these as, multiple times a week. I haven't really decided on that yet. All right, now, for those of you watching on YouNow, all of these videos that you're seeing, these broadcasts on YouNow, in case you missed the show or in case you missed part of the show and it was something that you wanted to be able to catch, you can always head on over to YouTube, and the video and a copy of the episode will be there, because I also stream live on YouTube when I'm streaming live on YouNow. So, all you have to do is go to youtube.com/hustle years, and you'll be able to go through and catch these videos. In fact, while you're over there, go ahead and hit subscribe. That way, if you don't want to miss an episode, but I go live at a time when you're not able to watch on YouNow, you will be able to just go over to YouTube and watch it there. You can also go to facebook.com/hustle years or twitter.com/hustle years and catch the Periscope. So whether you want to watch it on YouTube, Periscope, or Facebook Live, in addition to YouNow, if you miss it, don't worry, I got you covered. Thank you for taking the time to watch this episode. I hope you got a lot of great information, and I'll be back again soon.